Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. So we're yanking on this woman's fat rolls and oh my god, the smell. A compilation of the worst and most disturbing Reddit posts of all time. I'm drunk so I'll get it out there. When I was younger, I only pooped like 3 times a week, instead of every day like a normal kid. I also ate a ton, so these tri-weekly poops would more often than not be generously proportioned. I clogged our toilets so much and my parents would get pissed. Problem was, these monster shits weren't going anywhere, so I had to get creative. Enter the poop scissors. A nice, strong, sturdy pair of scissors from the junk drawer. If I took a poop that I felt was just too big, no problem. I'd use my poop scissors to chop it up into pieces, thus making it flushable. As you may imagine, they got used quite often and poop got caked onto them real fast. I quickly realized that these scissors could never be used for normal use ever again, so each time I was finished with them I wrapped them up in a handkerchief and hid them in my closet. Haven't used them in like 8 years or so, but they're still in there. Throw away for soon to be obvious reasons. I do not change my underpants. I am a lady. I will not change them until sort of a layer of discharge has grown in the crotch region and it starts to smell awful. Then I take them off, scrape off the stuff and wash them and pretend it never happened. I don't know why I do this, I'm mostly just forgetful, and because of it my downstairs region will frequently break out in huge pimples. So here goes. I'm an IB student, so I have to spend extra time back at school on most days till like 5-ish. Last year I was having a history toot and went to go get a drink of water. I walked down the hallway to go outside where the water fountains are, when I heard some sus noises coming from an empty room. The school was moving departments around. This noise sounded like an angry Lou Ferrigno stroking one out on helium. I stood there in fear for 2 minutes before the school janitor walked over and listened to the horrid sound with me. At this point I could hear a second fainter noise also. Finally one of us moved and the janitor knocked on the door and the noise stopped. A full minute of deadly silence passed before I looked at the janitor and then the door. He nodded as I reached for the handle of the door to jiggle it and the door was locked. The janitor pulled out his keys and unlocked the door slowly. Crap. The room stunk like the waterways of Mumbai. It's at this point that I should point out that my school had a special program, and in the middle of this room was 2 Down syndrome students, one elbow deep fisting the other. There was a pool of water consistency feces on the floor around. Not a single word was said before the janitor and I walked out, closed the door, looked at each other making an agreement to never talk of this again and walked off. I never saw either of the 2 kids again and neither I or the janitor have spoke. We just nod to each other when passing in the halls. My cum box. Well, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a shoebox, or at least once was, and whenever I masturbate I come into it. I've had it for 2 or 3 years now I think, so it has a fair amount of cum. It smells atrocious, and I tried to burn it once. When I lit it on fire, it was too damp due to the cum that it simply sizzled and didn't manage to actually light up. Turns out burning cum smells awful, so I had to spray it with a deodorant body spray just to get the old smell of burnt cum away. It also has some drenched papers stuck to it. That's pretty much it. I was injured in an accident at 14 and incapacitated. I went from masturbating 2 times a day to 0. After 2 weeks, I was frustrated and took it out on my parents. My mom and dad knew what was up and talked about my mom helping me masturbate. They approached me one afternoon and when my mom said, "I know you are frustrated and why you are frustrated, would you like some help masturbating?" Blood was rushing in my ears and I said yes, but I really didn't know if she meant what I thought she meant. I was excited and confused. She said that she would take care of me when I went to bed. Hours away. Super morbidly obese patient was brought in complaining of severe abdominal and vaginal pain and high fever. Doctor began palpating her abdomen and felt a mass in the lower right quadrant. She was too massive to fit in the ultrasound rooms, so they had to do everything there in the ER. The tech tried to do a regular ultrasound, but it wouldn't penetrate the 700 pounds, literally, of fat. So she decided she would have to do a transvaginal ultrasound. The doctor and about 30 nurses lift this tub of lard onto a table and somehow get her into stirrups. This was disgusting enough. Did I mention she was a landed whale? The tech started moving the folds of her thighs and her peniculus out of the way. One nursing student on each side to hold thigh flaps and one to hold stomach flab. I was the unlucky guy charged with handing her tools. The doctor had left the room, of course. He told us to just holler when we figured out what the hell was going on. So we're yanking on this woman's fat rolls and finally managed to start getting her vagina exposed. Oh my God. The smell. This is the most horrifying thing I've ever been exposed to before or since. Now, I worked for a flower shop growing up. I've been to funeral homes. I've seen bodies in all states of decay. I've hunted. I've fished. My grandparents owned cattle, poultry, and pigs. I've rubbed their urine all over my face. I would roll in cow poop before I went through this again. Her inner thighs and the opening of her vagina were weeping this blackish-brown, thick fluid. My classmates on either side of her promptly started gagging into their masks. The tech started screaming for me to run and get the peppermint oil. I dove across the theater for the bottle, ran back, and drenched all our masks in the oil. Once we could all breathe again, the tech told me to run for the doctor, that this was an emergency. Okay. I still have no idea what's going on. I can't see past the mountains of fat in the tech, but I do as I'm told. When I finally returned with the doctor, my fellow nursing students were all huddled in the corner with the tech, who looked like she had aged 20 years in the 10 minutes it took me to come back with the doctor. The doctor walked over and started asking the tech what the hell was going on. Keep in mind this fat tub of lard is still in the background screeching about how she wants to get down, and she's hungry, and when are we letting her go home? Somehow, somewhere this woman had found a man desperate enough to have sex with her. The mass in her abdomen? Was the remnants of a placenta. Her body had started rejecting the pregnancy, but because she was so overweight, she never knew she was pregnant, and never realized she was miscarrying. The baby had begun rotting inside her vaginal cavity and the placenta was just floating detached in her uterus. They had to take her in for emergency surgery, scrape the remnants of the baby and the placenta out of her body and put her on IV antibiotics. I know she spent at least a week in the hospital. Past that I don't want to know and pray I never find out. So that's my horror story of why I wimped out of nursing school in one day. Steve and his girlfriend Samantha went off to college in August. She went to Florida State, he went to Pennsylvania. So, she decides to fly to Pennsylvania to visit him. He was really happy to see her, so he decided to give her some oral action. He had done this numerous times before and he always enjoyed doing it, but for some reason, this time, she smelled really horrible, and she tasted even worse. He didn't want to offend her though because he hadn't seen her in months. So he put a Jolly Rancher in his mouth to cover it up, even though it didn't do much to help. In the course of eating her out, he accidentally pushed the candy inside of her, and stuck a finger in to grab it out. He took it out, and put it back into his mouth and bit it. Only, it wasn't the Jolly Rancher. It was a nodule of gonorrhea. As in, the blister-like structure that gonorrhea makes filled with diseased pus was the size of a Jolly Rancher and the poor guy bit it. I guess it was really dark in the room. He freaked out and started vomiting all over the place when it exploded in his mouth. He demanded to know what was going on. Turns out she had cheated on him at a club like, the first week of college, and had sex with some random guy and she bitch had no clue what was wrong with her. She noticed a strange smell though. So now, Steve is freaking out that he now has gonorrhea of the mouth and God knows what else. Have you heard of surströmming? It's rotten fermented herring, the smell of which induces a gag reflex that actually makes it impossible to eat for most normal people. Anyway. Midsummer in Sweden is one hell of a party and I can't remember a single midsummer where people haven't got royally drunk, or fallen over while dancing around the giant phallic symbol that we erect for the party. Rinsing your recently abused palate of rotten fish with large quantities of vodka and akvavit can get you more drunk than you'd care to imagine. But as for the frog dance, there is no excuse. Anyway. There's lots of rampant alcohol-fueled shagging that goes on. This night I was going to become another statistic. 6 a.m. and the missus and I have swayed home in the lazy and meandering way that the drunks have perfected over an eternity of liver abuse. We were determined to nail each other to the bed when we get home. Now, to be fair to her, she was awesome in bed, it's just that this night was about to go wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. We'd both been drinking for nearly 20 hours straight. We were both obscenely drunk. I could hardly keep my body erect, let alone Mr. Winky. Mrs. Nugget decided that, as sitting on my face was always a dead cert for trouser snick charming, she'd hoik her grass-stained dress up, and ride my face. This she did. Rather hard. I'm not only used to this, but a great fan. My tongue worked away at her feverishly, her cute puckered barking spider a bare few millimeters from my nose. I was in heaven, and, riding my face like a drunken pro, so was she. She was sat in the perfect position to tug away at any signs of life, and as she and I both neared the point of no return, I, mouth full of mimsy, was forced to heave air through my nose at a colossal rate, much like a jet fighter at full throttle just before takeoff. We both came. And, as fate would have it, the orgasm ripping through her body caused her to grind down harder on my face. And fart, forcefully injecting undiluted rectal gases into my air-hungry nose. A full force, and totally ripe, hot surstroming fart, far worse than the initial burst of smell from the tin, clean up my nostrils. The reaction was instant. And completely unaware of her crime and mistaking my convulsions as throes of ecstasy, Mrs. Nugget ground down harder on my face as I gasped for air. The enormity of my horror peaked as, in the full grip of natural bodily rejection, I hoarded my alcohol-rich stomach content, including a large amount of undigested, rotten fish, straight up her pink mitten. As the fetid herring now deeply stuck in my nostrils caused me to start a gagging fit that threatened to be my last, she ran screaming to the bathroom, leaving a trail of stomach acid, alcohol and rotten chunks of fish behind her on the floor as it gushed from her burning snatch. Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos. Click the right box for the creepy Reddit videos playlist. Let us know in the comments what you think about these stories.